Good morning, everyone. Mrs. Love here. I am creating a video for you for today because I am out and I don't want you to miss the lesson. I will be back this afternoon, but you will not see me to have your class. So please watch this whole recording and then follow the directions for your assignment at the end. This is a short lesson. I'm going to go through it quite quickly, but you have the lesson slides in the online school if you need them and the link to the lesson assignment. Okay, so today we're doing Unit 11, Lesson 4. This is called A Turbulent Time, A Tragic Transition. We're covering Chapter 40. You know, before I say it out loud, let me check these chapter numbers. I feel like that's not the right chapter number. Let me double check this. Oh yeah, this is chapter 43. So we should have already read chapters 41 and 42. If you have not read those, you want to get caught up. But today's lesson is from chapter 43. So let's start off by saying here, what do you think these two presidents have in common? This is just a question for you to think about. If you want to pause the video for a moment and think about that, then come on back. All right, so today we're going to focus on John F. Kennedy and mostly his assassination. In previous lessons, we have talked about him a little bit as his presidency and the programs that he started, which he referred to as the New Frontier. Okay, so this is an activity we would have done live in class together, like in a breakout room, but since you're not doing it in class, you can sort of just mentally see if you can match the titles with the pictures here. If you want to pause the video for a second and then come back and I will give you the correct answers. Okay, so the first picture obviously is the I Have a Dream speech from the March on Washington by Martin Luther King. The second picture is the Cuban Missile Crisis. The third picture is JFK or John F. Kennedy. And then this last one may have confused you, but that is a picture of Fidel Castro, who's the leader of Cuba, with Nikita Khrushchev, who is the premier in Russia. So if you got those correct, give yourself applause. All right, so today we're going to talk about the presidency of John F. Kennedy. We all always refer to him as JFK, and his presidency is often referred to as Camelot. Camelot is a fictitious place that comes from a famous story in English literature. Camelot, in the story, Camelot is known as like this huge, perfect kingdom where people lived, and the king and the queen had the most perfect and beautiful life. So his presidency was often referred to as Camelot because people viewed them as having a near perfect and beautiful presidency. Because of how unique he was young, he was exuberant, he had a beautiful wife and a beautiful family, and he was trying to accomplish so many things as president. But as we know, there were some challenges. We've already learned about some of those: the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, lots of violence going on in the Civil Rights Movement, and the beginnings of the Vietnam War. As president, he also had many accomplishments, and we've talked about those already as well. He was the first Roman Catholic to be president. He was our youngest elected president ever. He led people to volunteerism, created the Peace Corps, I have a typo there, and he worked to grow the civil rights movement. All right, take a look at this question. Pause your video, read the question, select which one you think is the correct answer, and then I will give you the answer in a moment. All right, so how did most people in America feel about President Kennedy? The correct answer is B. They loved him. They loved his family, and they followed them like they were superstars. Sort of like a modern or an old-time Kardashians. People just wanted to know everything about them. People wanted to be like them. They dressed like them. Women would follow Jackie Kennedy's hairstyles and her clothing styles. They were extremely popular. When Kennedy became president, much like many presidents, he had a big plan. He had all these great ideas, things he wanted to get done. His plan was called the New Frontier. The New Frontier. And this proposed plan was this New Frontier was something that would go well beyond what FDR had done with the New Deal. He had lots of government programs that he came up with, and he wanted to pass a civil rights bill, a tax cut bill, a health care bill. He wanted to work on women's rights, minimum wages. He wanted to help cities and farmers. So lots of big ideas, as most presidents have when they start off. Well, it didn't all go the way he wanted to. He got a lot of resistance. Some people called his ideas socialism and said that that went against democracy. Many conservative members in Congress opposed him, and this caused his popularity to fall a little tiny bit. But he was very charismatic, and people followed him and were encouraged by his words. And he really felt that he could get all these things accomplished, but he would need to get reelected for a second term, and there was a presidential election coming up in 1964. Okay, so a big event that was happening, he took a visit to the state of Texas, because he knew that Texas was going to be important to his getting reelected as president. It's a huge state, a lot of voters. There was some kind of bickering going on in Texas between some of the leaders in that state, so he decides he needs to go to Texas and visit these leaders, and at the same time make an appearance to the public because he's looking for votes. So before they're traveling to Texas, his press secretary gets an anonymous note that says, "Don't let the president come to Dallas. Texas is too dangerous." Because threats to presidents like this are common. I mean, presidents get death threats. It's just a fact. It's part of the job. They don't usually put too much into those unless they find something that's credible. They didn't think this threat was real, so they didn't pay much attention to it. So the president makes his way to Dallas, Texas. It's a beautiful day. People come out to see him as he and his motorcade travel through the city. Here's a picture of the car that he's riding in. This is the president here. This is his wife. And this is a picture of them at the airport. Let's see. November 22nd, 1963 is a date that all Americans remember. This is the date that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Here's the timeline of what happened that day. At 11:30 a.m. they arrived in Dallas. Air Force One is the airplane the president rides on. It lands at Love Field, and the president and his wife, Jackie Kennedy, they get off the plane, they meet the press, and there's a crowd of people there, and we can see them shaking hands in this photo. About 15 minutes later, they all board into their limousines. The Kennedys joined Texas Governor John Connally, his wife Nellie, and they're riding in an open-air limousine. It's like a convertible. There's no roof. Okay. Vice President Lyndon Johnson and his wife are riding in another car. By noon, the motorcade is traveling downtown Dallas, and crowds of people are estimated at 150,000 who came out and lined the streets to see the president. So look at all these people here. It's almost like a parade. By 12:29, they enter an area of the city called Dealey Plaza, and Connally turns to the president and says, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." A minute later, a bullet strikes the president in the back while he's waving to the crowd, followed by a second shot to the head. Another shot severely wounds the governor. A man in the crowd happens to be recording this as it happens. Because remember, it was like a parade. All these people came out to watch. And he has this all filmed on his home movie camera. Remember, this is before people had cell phones. By 1:33, President Kennedy is pronounced dead. and the White House press secretary announces the president's death, and the TV news interrupts programming to make a live announcement on American television. People are devastated. By 2:47, they return to the airplane, Air Force One. It leaves Dallas, Texas, and it's approaching Washington, D.C., and Mrs. Kennedy is already making funeral plans as Vice President Johnson is speaking with advisors. Johnson's wife, Lady Bird, suggests to Mrs. Kennedy that she should change her clothes because she was sitting beside her husband in the car when he was shot, and she's covered in blood. Her reply is, "Oh no, that's all right. I want them to see what they have done to Jack." And Jack is her nickname for her husband. Okay, so what I want you to do now is take a pause. There are two short little tiny videos I want you to watch separately from this. I can't share links in a recording, so you're going to need to go to your online school, grab these links out of the class announcements, and watch those. Pause this recording and then come back when you're done watching those two videos. All right, so Lyndon Johnson is now our new president. In the meantime, within a few days, they have captured a man named Lee Harvey Oswald at a movie theater after he had shot a policeman who noticed his suspicious behavior. He was acting weird. Oswald, he was a guy who had lived in different places around the world, including Russia and Cuba, and he was charged with the shooting of President Kennedy and Governor Connally, who was wounded. 2 days later, though, as they're transferring Oswald from one jail to another, he is shot and killed. Some guy named Jack Ruby shows up in the street as they're getting ready to transfer Oswald to another jail, and he comes and shoots Lee Harvey Oswald. So, forever in history now, nobody really knows what the motive was for killing President Kennedy, because the person who did it was killed. Lots of conspiracy theories have gone around over the years, and the assassination continues to be debated to this very day. All right, so here is what you are going to do now. In your online school, you're going to find the graded assignment for today's lesson. This is a mistake. It should say Unit 11, Lesson 4. There is a worksheet there with these questions, just like we have done in the previous lessons. You're going to answer the questions. Please use your book for help. Chapter 43, this is where the questions come from, right out of that chapter. Please write everything in complete sentences, save your work, and submit it to the assignment folder for Unit 11, Lesson 4. The only homework you have is to make sure you have these chapters read up to Chapter 43, and I should add Chapter 44 to that. We will be covering Chapter 44 tomorrow. If you have any questions, you may email me. I will be back in school this afternoon, so I will see you in PLT class. Have a fantastic day.